Well, welcome to the Speak Black Women podcast. I am super excited. My name is Quinn Conyers, and I literally broadcast the brilliance of Black women in business. I show you how to lean in and leverage every aspect of your voice so you can be super successful in your business or in your career. And if you know anything about this podcast, I look high and low, east and west, left and right to find Black women who are either unsilencing themselves, unmuting themselves, or really amplifying or illuminating the voices of others. But more importantly, it's all about getting some insight on how your voice is your secret weapon in business. And today I have a very special guest that I'm really excited about because I feel like many of us are quiet about things that happen to us. We don't want to talk about it. Maybe there's a stigma about talking to somebody about your problems because your mother or your father told you don't tell our business. And at the end of the day, I feel like sometimes we are suffering in silence, but more importantly, things that could have been lifted generations ago, we're still carrying because we don't want to talk about it. And I believe that there is a liberation when we use our language. I believe that there's a freedom when we begin to speak up about the things that maybe have kept us silent for way too long. So with that being said, I don't think it's just good enough for you to know who I am. I think it's also beneficial for you to see who I am. And then up next, we're going to hear from our very special guest, LeNaya Crawford, and we're going to talk all about why you've been keeping quiet and why it might be time for you to speak up on what's been holding you back in life and business and in your career. So we're going to get started right after this quick little video. All right, so now you know a little bit more about the Speak Black Woman podcast. Let's go ahead and bring on our very special guest. We have Miss LeNaya Crawford.
Hello.
Welcome to the Speak Black Woman podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Listen, I'm excited to have you. For those of you who are not familiar with Miss LeNaya, literally she is helping people foster a deeper mind, body, and spirit connection on their path for healing and purpose. She is literally a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is certified trauma therapist. That means if you are aware of your trauma, or you might not be, she is the person that can really guide you on sifting through that. She's also an advanced certified in yoga, meditation, and breathwork teacher. Hopefully she can explain a little bit more about that, as well as she's a New York Times and Huffington Post featured holistic mental health expert. And guess what, y'all? She looks like me and she looks like you, and we have her right here in the flesh. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. Out of all career paths that you could choose, LeNaya, I know I'm just meeting you, right? But I feel like you're on the same page and you could have done a million things. Why did you get into this type of work of family and just therapy and just whole mind, body, spirit? Because I'm sure you're multi-talented. You all are. Why, why this industry?
Yeah. So funny thing is, I've always known I wanted to be in the helping profession, and very specifically in the therapeutic profession. I've known I wanted to be a therapist since I was in middle school. I was the friend that was always, talking to their friends about their problems and always understanding that confidentiality was a thing. My mom tells the story all the time that she would check in and say, hey, what's going on with your friend? Is everything good? What's happening? And I would say, Mom, I can't talk to you about this. It's confidential. I'm acting, as if I'm their therapist. So I've always known I wanted to help people experience this deep, lifelong healing. And then as I grew in my career, I understood the integration of practices like yoga, breathwork, and sound healing, and how it really helps my clients and really anyone truly be able to experience this authenticity, self-love, and freedom that I think ultimately we all want to experience and feel.
No, that's good stuff. Now, I think we're getting better, but I think that there's a stigma around, therapy and telling people your business and your problems. I have a therapist. I've had her probably for about 3 years now. I found her on therapyforblackgirls.com. And I remember I was pulling up to my appointment and I was on the phone with my mom, like, all right, Mom, I got to go. I'm at my therapy appointment. I didn't know she had a full-fledged breakdown. She calls my mom, my aunt, she calls my grandmother. She's like, I don't know what's wrong with Quinn. She's in therapy. I'm like, it's not that serious. Like, do you feel like our generation is more open to therapy and healing? And do you find that there's still a stigma that you kind of have to cut through to people to say, hey, you need me. We need to talk.
Yeah, I mean, our generation is definitely more open to therapy and definitely more open to integrative practices, but there are still folks in our generation and the generations before us who think that therapy are for people that are quote unquote crazy, or you've got to be having a huge mental breakdown to be able to seek out help. And I think it just stems back to culturally, generationally, we never had time to seek help. It wasn't a thing to pause, think about the problems, and then talk it through. And so I think that that generational trauma is still very much so alive within our culture. But thankfully, our generation is understanding that, yes, one, we're worthy of the time it takes for us to process our feelings. And two, actual healing happens when you communicate and process these things with a therapist.
No, I love that. With a cherry on top. You should talk to my mother because she just be like, I don't need that. You need it more than any of us. Like, you are that needs to be shipped, you know what I mean? And on somebody's couch ASAP. You know,
Right.
And I love that you're right. And just from, I know that you deal a lot with, the traumatics of it. And some people don't even know it's been a traumatic experience because it's their normal, right? And I'm sure you're like, no, that's not, we need to talk about that. And I think that you're right. And it's the history. I mean, if you look at the African-American history, our lineage, what has happened. It was just like literally you could be with your family and tore apart and you're supposed to go about your everyday, like your child, your husband, like that is traumatic. I do not even understand.
Yeah.
And I don't even know, I couldn't even unpack the mental capacity of being alive in like the 1700s and the 1800s. When slavery was the norm. I couldn't imagine, because I have two kids, a 4 and a 6-year-old, that we're fine. All of a sudden, next day, somebody wants to sell my 4-year-old. What? And then you're supposed to go about your day. Like, is that still like remnants of us? Or is that like theory?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's like, I think that's true. You had to go about your day, right? And so I think that is precisely why us as a culture, right? Black people, we really don't talk. We don't go to therapy. We're still scared of yoga and breathing exercises and all the things, right? But just like you said, there was no time. Just think about it. If we had to sell our children or our husband, was brutally murdered, why would we want to sit with that, right? We got to move on to the next thing, because guess what? There's still stuff to do, right? I still got to go and do the things that I'm supposed to do in this realm. And so that is the mindset that's been transferred down through generations. And I'm, again, so glad that we are moving and grooving forward, and we are understanding that we're worthy of the time it takes to process these things.
No, you're absolutely right. And I know, like, your title was like licensed marriage and family therapist and certified trauma therapist. But if you don't mind, I would like to call you a silence breaker, right? Like, can I call you a silence?
Come on, Quinn, I receive it. I receive that.
And the reason why I think about you, in the form of a silence breaker is because I feel like if we are going through something mentally with our marriage or with, our family member or even something traumatic, I think the first step is to be silent, right? So if you're meeting with someone, like, how do you get them? Do a lot of people come to you because they want to, or they force? Like, how do you make them comfortable to break their silence?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So now people come to me because they want me. They know what kind of therapy I do. And if I'm honest, I really feel like in the last maybe 7 or so years, Black people and Black women specifically have been more open to coming into a therapeutic environment. And so when you're searching for a therapist, it's very similar to dating someone, So we take our time to get to know each other. So we have our consultation first. You can see everything about me or your therapist on the website. And then if you feel comfortable, then take me the next step. But I say this all the time to my trainees and my supervisees. The biggest factor as to whether or not therapy will be successful is whether or not you have a relationship with the client. So we don't just go right in. And I think a lot of people think that we're just heading for the traumas. Tell me the worst thing that's ever happened to you in the first meeting, and we're going to unpack that. No, we spend a lot of time getting to know each other because, let's be real, I'm still a stranger. You just met me. And 9 times out of 10, you're not ready to tell me your deepest, darkest secrets in the first 1 or even 5 sessions. So I think that's really a key piece, is getting to know the person that's sitting across from you.
I love that analogy of dating, because you're right. It's just like, wait a minute, are we scripted? I mean, is this going to
Right.
work out or not? And I love that not only do you provide your work to individuals, and I do think you're right, more Black women are like, I ain't right, get me right. I want my mental freedom. But
Yeah.
you do a lot of work too for other women who are in your industry. And I know that you have a program. Can you talk a little bit about what you do for other therapists, other, I guess, mental health practitioners? What do you have for them so they can serve their clients better?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I created the Holistic Therapist Academy. And so it is a certification and immersion program that teaches therapists and mental health professionals how to ethically integrate and confidently facilitate trauma-informed yoga, breathwork, and sound healing to help their clients heal from anxiety, depression, and trauma. And so I specialize in that integration. I call it science and soul. So research-based practices along with these holistic practices, because let me tell you, Quinn, when I started to integrate these practices in my work as a therapist, my clients, their prognosis was quicker. They were tapping into this deep lifelong healing faster, and they were connected to all parts of themselves. And so I created this academy for any therapist or mental health professional who is wanting to shift the paradigm of mental health and really be able to walk with their clients through the whole journey of healing.
I love that. And if people are like, oh, I'm a therapist, or I know someone who's a therapist, where can they go to learn a little bit more about that, which you just mentioned, that program, that certification?
Yeah, so they can visit my website, theholisticmft.com, and that information is right on the homepage.
Okay, awesome. And give it to me one more time. I'm going to put it over here as well so people know where to connect with you. So where can people go again?
Theholisticmft.com.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to add that in just a second. So
Awesome.
awesome. So, I know for a fact that I'm sure you work with all type of different people. Do you get a different joy, with working with what I would say, maybe Black women? And the reason why I do that is because I feel like this is me, this might not be fact, but I do feel like we have probably been the ones suffering and not getting the assistance that we need to be liberated. Do you find a different joy, let's say, working with Black women versus like maybe, I don't know, other types of people?
Yes, because it's like a reflection of yourself, right?
Mhm.
And I get such a joy being able to remind Black women that they are worthy and that they are enough. Because I think that Black women, we have this Superwoman complex. It never fails. Every Black woman that comes into my room, or comes into the virtual space, they are, carrying all this weight on their shoulders. They're checking out their to-do list. They're worrying about the kids, the husband, the career, the spouse, the partner, and there's really not a whole lot of time for themselves. And so
Mhm.
they're here, thinking that they're unworthy, they're not enough, or they're not doing enough. Right? Those limiting beliefs, those imposter syndrome. Right? But listen, I'm speaking to myself too now. And so I do find a great joy, and I find such a joy with working with Black women. I even created affirmation cards specifically for Black women because I
Mm.
was noticing that, oh my goodness, we have this complex, and we're like, it just doesn't register that we are worthy of rest. We are enough just as we are, and that we can love ourselves no matter where we are on the journey. So, long story short, I love working with Black women.
Well, I'm not going to say that she been on my boulevard, my street, or my row, but I might have went down there a little bit. It's so interesting because, my therapist always says to me, like, Queen, why do you put so much pressure on yourself? I need you to, alleviate some of that pressure. And I don't know if it's society, put it on me, or if I put it on myself, because of whatever. But, I think that you're right. So tell me a little bit more about these cards, because I probably need those in my own life. I told you I'm
Yes.
a host, but I'm taking notes at the same time. I'm a student. I'm a student.
Yes, absolutely. So I have a line called Affirmation is Power, and it's a holistic healing line for women ready to love, heal, and manifest the lives that they want. And
Mhm.
so the first affirmation deck is called Black Woman, You Are Enough. And it's a full 48 card affirmation deck. We've got 31 affirmations that will carry you through the month, but you also have affirmations and activities that speak directly to anxiety, depression, and trauma. Because I'm a therapist, I always got to put that mental health aspect in there. So not only do you get affirmations, but you also get activities and affirmations that speak directly to anxiety, depression, and trauma.
I love that. Yeah, go ahead and email me that after today's meeting. Not
Yes.
even that. I just want to mentally be well. And it's
Mm,
interesting because I recently reached out to my therapist. Like we were doing good for, I mean, one time we were like weekly. That was when it was crazy. Um,
yeah.
like my life was just like everything was like all over. And then we went to like bi-weekly, then we went to monthly, and then I kind of fell off for a little bit. And I want to talk about, just people using and expressing their voice and talking to someone who is certified like yourself, not just when everything is bad. Because people are like, oh my
Mm,
God, what's going on? Your life is in shambles. Let me go see a therapist. Let me,
right.
sit on the couch as I'm just talking and they're in the back with a notepad, right? Because
Right.
that's what people think, right? But I want to talk about, especially because I serve a lot of Black women as a Black woman, is what about seeing that therapist when everything is going right? And the reason
Mm,
why I'm bringing that up is because, just my own, you guys know who are listening, whether it's at your leisure, YouTube, replay, however you're listening to this, is I am very transparent with my audience. And I reached out to my therapist, not because everything was going wrong, but actually everything was going right. And I began to get anxiety, LeNaya, like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, is this too good to be true? Is this a trick? Is this like a temporary thing? It's almost like we're good when we're suffering, we're in pain, like we're
Mm,
used to the bottom, right? But
yes.
as soon as we start like kind of like experiencing and tasting the fruits of our labor, it's almost like the self-sabotage queen like
Yep.
keeps her ugly head. Can you talk about that a little bit, and mentally, maybe especially for Black women?
Oh
Why
yeah.
do we do that? I mean, why do I like not you can I know, just give me your insight. But I was almost low key a little bit mad at myself. Like, Quinn, you worked with
Mm,
this, you prayed for this. It took you 16 years to get to where you are. And now
yeah.
you're in this mental space of, oh, is this going to last? Is this real? Do
Mm,
people really want to be on my podcast? Do people really want to hear me? Like, it's like all these things like,
yeah.
what? Okay, so I'm going to be quiet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So it's that self sabotage, that those limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome really starts to creep in. And I think you said it beautifully. Again, so generational trauma gets passed down. We're not used to being on top, right? We're used to being in survival mode, right? And for generations, we weren't living, we were surviving. And so we're in this space now where we're starting to be able to experience what it's like to live. And it's new, it's foreign, like with any change, right? When we think of change, we're usually thinking about, something bad or traumatic or whatever. But good change can also give you these limiting beliefs, the self sabotage, and these anxious thoughts. And I think, again, it just goes back to historically what we've been through. And on top of that, and I talk about this a lot, particularly for Black women, in many spaces, we've had to learn how to code switch or, be less of ourselves. And that is a trauma. And I talk about this all the
mm,
time, right? And I don't think that we have realized that that is a trauma in itself. And it is, right? When I have to make sure my hair looks a certain way or make sure I don't say a certain thing because of the rooms that I'm in, I'm learning that I am not worthy of being my full and authentic self. And so when we get to the place of, oh, everything's going good and people are listening to the podcast and they are purchasing my things, it's like, wait a second, is this supposed to happen this way? Because for so long we've had to change up who we were in order to be accepted. And I think that's really what it boils down to.
girl, I could talk to you all day, all night. Like how in high school you used to have that boyfriend or whatever. You just be like, what you doing? Like, no,
Right.
really, it's LeNaya. Like for real. Like I'm not cheating. It's real because you're so right. And it's interesting because you can't see it right now, but I have a whole bunch of like affirmations and all types of things, around. And one of the questions I had to consider, because again, I'm like, literally, there's just been, I don't think that people understand that abundance is our birthright.
Come
And I
on.
do believe, like you said, that we've been so used to making $1 out of 15 cents. We've been so used to surviving and struggling. And when abundance happens, it's almost like, do I even deserve this? Because I didn't even have to freaking work hard for it. Like I still got all
Yeah.
my edges. And you mean to tell
Mm,
me that I can? And Ayana Van Zandt talked about this. She talked about this with her child.
mhm,
She sabotaged herself with Oprah. It was almost like she did one thing. They loved her. They kept running her back. And she began to kind of be her own demise. And she's like, I didn't even work for this. Like it's almost like she didn't appreciate it because
mm.
the stereotype of you gotta work so hard to get what you
Yep.
want. But you said something about code switching that is probably traumatic. and we don't even know, or this whole thing of perfection that weighs on us. Like, you got to be twice as good to be even like remotely where they are, not
Yep.
understanding that they were threatened by our presence, and our 10% is better than their 100% any day.
Mm.
So I have questions that I always consider before I give somebody my yes, right? And one of the questions, number question is, can I be my authentic self without anxiety?
I love that.
And the reason why is because, I mean, right now I don't have one, and I don't know if you looked into it, but when I show up, I have a lot of like head wraps
I
and
love that.
other stuff. Like, and sometimes I'm like, is this too much? If I have to ask myself, is it too much? And it's not where I need to be. So a lot of people now, and I speak in sneaks. Like, I mean, I did a speaking engagement before, and literally my feet were on fire for 20 minutes. I was like, never again. My job is to serve these people. So if I'm speaking and my feet are hurting, then I can't do this. So I have a unique style, and I'm very vibrant, as you can see. But when you talked about that, it's like, okay, let me be mindful. Or if you catch yourself slipping, like, yeah, girl, I mean, yes, that sounds amazing. Right? Like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, but I love that you mentioned it. And let's talk about that for a second, because again, I super serve Black women. And, one of the reasons why I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to have you on the podcast is because I feel like more of us are willing to see therapists because we are looking at a mirror. Whereas I'm not about to sit here on this couch or on this virtual and tell this white woman, this white lady, my problems. I just don't feel comfortable. So I love the fact that you're in this space, but I want to talk about maybe some of the other things that we might need to see a practitioner that is traumatic for us and we're not even aware. Like trauma, you know what I mean? People like I don't people, when they say, oh yeah, I want to work broken or abused or women who've been violent. I'm like, you do know that they don't know that they're broken. They don't know they've been abused. They don't know all that. So when you throw in these labels, people are dismissing you because they don't know that that's their thing. So what other things, because I thought that was beautiful about maybe code switching. That can be a trauma trigger that we're not aware of that might be affecting us, that we could be liberated if we saw somebody like you.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And so when we talk about trauma, right, I think it's important for us to remember that I want to say everyone, but you never want to generalize. Almost everyone has experienced trauma in their lifetime. And I will have to say that most Black women have experienced multiple traumas in their lifetime. And trauma isn't like some huge catastrophic event that happens. Like I said, you going into a meeting and you wanting to say, oh yeah, girl, and your boss says, excuse me. That's right there. That's a traumatic event because what you're learning is, oh, I can't be my authentic self, right? And something as simple as, you went to, I use this example all the time. You went to do a speaking engagement, it was your first speaking engagement, and the crowd booed you, right? That's a trauma. That's a traumatic event because now you are changing how you would have showed up because of the event. And I think that if you can look at it that way, you'll start to see that, wow, I've actually experienced more trauma than I realized. Any event that happens to you that makes you switch the way you authentically want to be, that is a trauma.
Wow.
And so when we can understand these are literally everywhere, we're more likely to reach out and engage with a therapist, right? It's not when life is falling apart, and it's not when life is going great. It's when life is happening, right? And I think that that's really ultimately the reason why we should all be in therapy.
Listen, I love it. And I apologize to my therapist. I said, I know I took a break. I said, I promise you I didn't cheat on you, but I'm back now. And she's like, girl, it happens to all of us because you're right. And I need to process and go through that. So I'm grateful that people like her and people like you exist to be able to be a safe haven, for people to be able to kind of work through those things and really be aware. I think awareness is what I'm hearing from you. Like, again, you go into a meeting, you're like, yes, girl, I love it. And they're like, excuse me, what did you say? And they're like, okay, that's not normal. Or I shouldn't have did that. So
exactly.
I love that. I love that. So I know that you have a free resource for people who are listening right now. I know that your website is at the bottom of the screen. So if you want to connect with her, but if people want to get this free resource, do they go to the website as well? Tell me about the resource and where do they find it?
Yes. So I'd love to gift your audience with a free sound bath and breathwork session and an anxiety workbook so that they can work through any anxieties that are coming up. And so if you would like a copy of that, email admin@theholisticmft.com and we will send you your free resource.
Okay. And give us, it says, so it's admin at, and then like whatever the website right here.
Yes.
Okay,
Admin
perfect.
at the Holistic MFT.
All right, y'all. So just add the admin at and then the website there. You can get that free resource. So I
Yes.
absolutely love that. So any last minute words for someone who's just like, Quinn, this was amazing. LeNaya just rocked my world, blew my mind. I didn't even realize all these like traumatic things. And I am interested in potentially having a conversation to work through these things.
Yeah.
How would you recommend that somebody should they look for somebody like you? Where can they find a therapist? Are you global? Can you do telehealth with anybody? Like if they're like, oh no, I don't want anybody, but I want her. Because that's the questions I be getting. They be like, you just no, I want to work with her. Where can people go if you have any openings, or if you're not available, where can they go for that mental support and work that you do?
Yeah. So if you would like to work with me in a one-on-one coaching situation, that's globally, you don't have to be in Atlanta to work with me. You can visit my website, and I think it says connect. Anyway, visit my website, and I think there's a part that says like connect with LeNaya, and it will guide you through how you can connect with me. If you are looking for a therapist, I only have a few slots available. If you're looking for another therapist, Therapy for Black Girls is my favorite resource to recommend. And also, if you're looking for a therapist and maybe cost is a factor, Open Path Collective is another great resource for those who want to access therapy and maybe the traditional price points aren't as accessible. So those are some great resources as well. And I would love to leave your audience by reading or with one of the affirmations, if that's okay. I'd love to read.
Absolutely.
So I am worthy is literally my favorite affirmation. And I think that us as Black women, we have to remind ourselves of that every day. And so this affirmation says, I am worthy. Every day I wake up, I am worthy of all the blessings that have come and are yet to come. I choose to release thoughts of being undeserving and know that I deserve all that is good in this world. I am worthy. So just a little reminder for your listeners.
Doesn't that just make your soul smile? I was just like, yes, I am worthy. Give me my crown. Like, yes. I am worthy. I love it. Well, LeNaya, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. Definitely I'm going to put this back on the screen. If anybody wants to connect with you, I want to personally stay connected as well. So hang out for just a second. I'm going to close off and come right back to you. Okay?
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
No problem. My pleasure. Listen, y'all, I don't know about you, but that was absolutely amazing. I tell y'all that not only do I bring on people for you, but I bring on people for me. And that was liberating because I didn't realize some of the traumas that we deal with and don't even know that it's a traumatic situation. So I just appreciate LeNaya's voice in this space and what she's doing for us in the mental health space. I just absolutely love that. So again, if you love this episode, make sure you read a review. Also, if you haven't already done so, make sure you go to speakblackwoman.com and grab yourself a copy of my second book. It's officially available at Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and Target. But if you want to get it signed directly for me, you got to go to speakblackwoman.com. It's how women in business can profit from public speaking. As always, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Speak Black Woman podcast. LeNaya has been a joy to literally interview and learn from. So if you like this, make sure you share this podcast with a friend. But more importantly, make sure that you are not silent on the things that it's time to become liberated from. I'll see you next time.